Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. This morning will be in Exodus chapter 2, verse 11 through chapter 3, verse 22. In those days, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and observed their hard labor, and he saw an Egyptian man attacking a Hebrew man, one of his own people. He looked this way and that, and saw that no one was there, and then he attacked the Egyptian, and concealed the body in the sand. When he went out the next day, there were 2 Hebrew men fighting, so he said to the one who was in the wrong, "Why are you attacking your fellow Hebrew?" The man replied, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you planning to kill me like you killed that Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid, thinking, "Surely what I did has become known." When Pharaoh heard about this event, he sought to kill Moses. So Moses fled from Pharaoh and settled in the land of Midian, and he settled by a certain well. Now a priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and began to draw water and filled the troughs in order to water their father's flock. When some shepherds came and drove them away, Moses came up and defended them, and then watered their flock. So when they came home to their father Reuel, he asked, "Why have you come home so early today?" They said, "An Egyptian man rescued us from the shepherds, and he actually drew water for us and watered the flock." He said to his daughters, "So where is he? Why in the world did you leave the man? Call him so that he may eat a meal with us." Moses agreed to stay with the man, and he gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. When she bore a son, Moses named him Gershom, for he said, "I have become a resident foreigner in a foreign land." During that long period of time, the king of Egypt died, and the Israelites groaned because of the slave labor. They cried out, and their desperate cry, because of their slave labor, went up to God. God heard their groaning. God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the Israelites, and God understood. Now Moses was shepherding the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the desert and came to the mountain of God, to Horeb. The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire from within a bush. He looked, and the bush was ablaze with fire, but it was not being consumed. So Moses thought, "I will turn aside to see this amazing sight. Why does the bush not burn up?" When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to look, God called to him from within the bush and said, "Moses, Moses." And Moses said, "Here I am." God said, "Do not approach any closer. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." He added, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." Then Moses hid his face, because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, "I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. I have come down to deliver them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from that land to a land that is both good and spacious, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the region of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now indeed the cry of the Israelites has come to me, and I have also seen how severely the Egyptians oppress them. So now go, and I will send you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, so that I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" He replied, "Surely I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that I have sent you. When you bring the people out of Egypt, you and they will serve God on this mountain." Moses said to God, "If I go to the Israelites and tell them, 'The God of your fathers has sent me to you,' and they ask me, 'What is his name?' what should I say to them?" God said to Moses, "I am that I am." And he said, "You must say this to the Israelites, 'I am has sent me to you.'" God also said to Moses, "You must say this to the Israelites, 'The Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial from generation to generation. Go and bring together the elders of Israel and tell them, 'The Lord, the God of your fathers, appeared to me, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I have attended carefully to you and to what has been done to you in Egypt. And I have promised that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, to a land flowing with milk and honey. The elders will listen to you, and then you and the elders of Israel must go to the king of Egypt and tell him, 'The Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So now let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, so that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God.' But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go, not even under force. So I will extend my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders that I will do among them, and after that he will release you. I will grant this people favor with the Egyptians, so that when you depart you will not leave empty-handed. Every woman will ask her neighbor and the one who happens to be staying in her house for items of silver and gold and for clothing. You will put these articles on your sons and daughters. Thus you will plunder Egypt." Yeah, so you have Moses here, who has grown up, which the book of Acts says that he's essentially 40 years old by this point in time. But he sees an Egyptian abusing a Hebrew, and he slays the Egyptian to save the Hebrew. And then he sees two Hebrews fighting, and he tries to mediate between them, and it's not received well. Then Moses hears about then Pharaoh hears about the event of Moses slaying an Egyptian and wants to kill him. So Moses flees, and he flees to Midian, and comes upon these shepherds and I guess shepherdesses, and saves them and waters their flocks for them. And it says that God heard the cries of the Israelites under the harsh labor of the Egyptians. And then you have the instance of Moses finding the burning bush, and the mission given to him by God, essentially, to go down into Egypt and bring up God's people, that is the Israelites, out of Egypt. And God tells Moses his memorial name, that is I am, that is Yahweh, in the Hebrew. Yeah, but God says it won't be easy. That is, in 3:19, I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go, not even under force. So I will extend my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders that I will do among them, and after that he will release you. And even that they will plunder the Egyptians. Yeah, so Moses is warned ahead of time that there's going to be resistance by Pharaoh, which it's interesting that given that's the case, Moses doesn't have a whole lot of, well, there's instances of just like doubt of like, why did you bring me out here to do this to this people? It's just making things worse type thing. So, but yeah. Let's see what Guzik has to say. Hebrews 11:24 through 26 tells us some of what happened in the heart and mind of Moses as he looked at their burdens. It says that by faith, Moses deliberately decided to identify with the people of Israel rather than his Egyptian prestige and opportunity. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasure of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures of Egypt, for he looked to the reward. Moses knew who he was. As much allure and ease there was in life as an Egyptian, he knew that's not me. His faith in the God he served helped him to know who he was. Yeah, and with the comments of Reuel's daughters, that an Egyptian saved them, it sounds as though he could have easily fit in, and was easily fitting in as an Egyptian. He looked this way and that. These are the actions of a man who knew he was about to do wrong. Moses had several reasons for doing what he did, but his concern to hide what he did shows a troubled conscience. He killed the Egyptian. The Bible itself explains some of Moses' thinking behind this action in Acts 7:23 through 25. It explains that Moses did this to defend and avenge the beaten Israelite, but also with the expectation that his fellow Israelites would recognize him as their deliverer. Now when he was 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. And seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended and avenged him, who was oppressed, and struck down the Egyptian, for he supposed that his brethren would have understood that God would deliver them by his hand, but they did not understand. Why are you striking your companion? He said to the two fighting Israelites. Moses had reason to believe that his education, royal background, success, and great sympathy for the people of Israel would give him credibility among them. He here tried to intervene in a violent dispute between two Hebrew men, but he was rejected. Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Moses seemed to act like a prince given his royal background. He acted like a judge, and that he determined that one of these men did the wrong. He seemed to be the perfect prince and judge for Israel, but they did not want him. A prince has the right to rule and expects your loyalty. A judge has the right to tell you to do and to punish you if you don't do it. In rejecting Moses, they said to him, "We don't want you to rule over us or tell us what to do." People reject Jesus on the same thinking. And just like Moses, Jesus was rejected at his first coming. Both Moses and Jesus were favored by God from birth, miraculously preserved in childhood, mighty in words and deed, offered deliverance to Israel, rejected with spite, rejected in their right to be prince and a judge over Israel. Just like Jesus after him, Moses could not deliver when he lived in the palaces of glory. He had to come down off the throne, away from the palace, and into a humble place before he could deliver his people. Moses had his plans, and they made sense from his perspective, yet God's plan was radically different. 40 years later, God led Moses and his brother Aaron to Pharaoh with a special stick that turned into a snake. Moses asked Pharaoh to let Israel go back to Canaan. Pharaoh said no, so God brought plagues of blood, frogs, mosquitoes, flies, cattle disease, boils, hail, locusts, and darkness. Finally, God judged stubborn Pharaoh and Egypt with a plague on the firstborn of Egypt. Israel escaped across the Red Sea. The waters of the Red Sea came back and killed the Egyptian army, and the Israelites crossed the wilderness and came to Canaan. Such an unlikely plan would never come from man. Moses dwelt in the land of Midian. If Moses went into the area of Canaan in Syria, he would have found no refuge. There was a treaty between Ramesses II and the Hittite king to the effect that fugitives along the northern route to Syria would be arrested and extradited. So Moses went southeast instead to Midian. In that day, Midian described the area on both the west and east sides of the Reed Sea, land that today is both Saudi Arabia on the east of the Reed Sea and Egypt on the Sinai Peninsula on the west of the Reed Sea. Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. In Egypt, Moses enjoyed life as one of the royal family and was waited on hand and foot. In that distant desert of Midian, Moses finally had an opportunity to be a servant, and he did a good job, working hard to help water the flocks of Reuel's daughters. Moses was content to live with the man. By taking a wife and having a son, Moses seemed to give up on Egypt and his hope of being a deliverer for Israel. Moses was content with where God put him, even though Midian was very different from Egypt. He called his name Gershom. This name, meaning stranger, was evidence of some loneliness, living apart from either the Egyptians or the Hebrews. We make a mistake when we think that the years in Midian were a waiting time for Moses. They were instead working years. He had never worked this hard in his life. God trained him, shaping him for his future calling, but Moses was certainly not on the shelf. In Egypt, Moses learned how to be somebody. In Midian, he learned how to be nobody. Much he had learned in Egypt, but more in Midian. Was at this conference recently in Detroit, and one of the attendees there brought up a passage in the Quran that describes that mimics what's going on at the end of Exodus 2 here, but it gets some of the details wrong. That is, it combines the story of Moses watering the flocks here with the prior instance of Jacob watering the flocks of Laban's daughters, and even has this father-in-law character offer a deal of working for so many years to Moses. So it was interesting. Let's see, Exodus 3. Was his name here Reuel or Jethro? Regardless, the bush was burning with fire, but the bush was not consumed. It wasn't just that Moses saw a bush burning. Apparently it is not uncommon for a plant like this to spontaneously ignite out in that desert. Nevertheless, two things were distinctive about that bush. The angel of the Lord appeared from the midst of the bush. Though the bush burned, the bush was not consumed. We can say that the burning bush was a picture of the cross. The Hebrew word used to describe this bush comes from the word to stick or to prick. This means a thorn bush or bramble. We can think of the cross where Jesus, crowned with thorns, endured the fires of judgment and yet was not consumed by them, and be reminded of the cross when we consider the burning bush. Clark on the angel of the Lord. Not a created angel, certainly, for he is called Jehovah, and has the most expressive attributes of the Godhead applied to him. And he is an angel, Malach, a messenger, in whom was the name of God. And who is this but Jesus, the leader, redeemer, and savior of all mankind? When the Lord saw that he turned aside to look, God didn't speak to Moses until he had Moses' attention. God called to him from the midst of the bush. Moses didn't see anyone in the burning bush, yet God, in the presence of the angel of the Lord, was there, calling out to Moses from the midst of the burning bush. Yeah, undoubtedly this is another occasion where Jesus appeared before his incarnation in the Old Testament as the angel of the Lord, as he did many times. Yeah, we say this is God in the person of Jesus Christ because of God the Father. It is said, "No one has seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, who is in the bosom of the Father, he has declared him." And that no man has ever seen God in the person of the Father. Then he said, he told Moses to keep a distance, and he commanded Moses to show reverence for God's presence. Yeah. This was a holy place, and because God is holy, there will always be a distance between God and man. Even in perfection, man will never be equal to God, though he will be able to have a closer fellowship with him than ever. Take your sandals off your feet. Removing the sandals showed inappropriate humility, because the poorest and most needy have no shoes, and servants usually went barefoot. It also recognized the immediate presence of God. In many cultures, you take off your shoes when you come into someone's house, and now Moses was in God's house, a place of his immediate presence. I've come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians. God did not just then decide to give Israel the land of Canaan. It was the same land that he had promised to the patriarchs some 400 years previous to this. I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people. In Exodus 3:8, God said, "I have come down to deliver them." Then at Exodus 3:10, God said, "Come now, therefore, and I will send you." If God said he would deliver them, why did he use or need Moses at all? This shows that God often uses and chooses to rely on human instruments. God could do it all by himself, but it is most often God's plan to work with and through people as we are workers together with him, which is really cool. I will certainly be with you. God's reply to the question of who am I is intended to take Moses' focus off of himself and onto where it should be, on God. Therefore, God never answered the question, who am I? Instead, he reminds Moses, I will certainly be with you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. The sign that God had truly sent Moses may not have been the coming to Mount Sinai, which did not happen for many, many months. The sign probably refers backwards to the sign of the burning bush and the encounter with God there. And God said to Moses, I am who I am. It might seem nonsensical to refer to one's self with the phrase, I am who I am, yet it reveals something important about God. He has no equal. Yeah. I mean, to me, it indicates that God is the only being that is self-sustaining, the only being that has this self-perpetuating existence. Man has an existence that depends on a lot of different things in order to stay alive and function. But, and even with all of those things met, after a few years, we're gone and dead. But God isn't like that. He's one who is. And by him, every other existence is sustained. I am. This is a divine title that Jesus took upon himself often, clearly identifying himself with the voice from the burning bush. Yeah. Unless you believe that I am, you will die in your sins. Then they will heed your voice. This was a precious promise to Moses. 40 years before, when it seemed that he had everything going for him, the people of Israel rejected him as a deliverer for their nation. Surely he must be wondering why they would listen to him now, when it seemed he had nothing going for him. But Moses had God going for him now. They would indeed listen to Moses' message. I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go. God knew this from the beginning. He knew that what it would take to move the heart of Pharaoh, and the plagues and calamities to come were engineered for a specific purpose, and they were not haphazardly planned. God promised to arrange things not only to move Pharaoh's heart, but also to move the heart of the Egyptian people, so that when Israel did depart, they would be showered with silver and gold and clothing. This was not stealing or extortion. It was the appropriate wages for the years of forced labor. Good point on that. Anywho, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.